What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazik, aka Franchise Play. Gotta tell you about this new app called RotoQL. RotoQL works for users for DraftKings as well as FanDuel, and it does two things primarily. It saves time when you're picking lineups. The second thing that it does is obviously what? It helps you win more. RotoQL is designed to give you the same types of tools that the pros, that the hardcore daily fantasy sports players use to get success. You can get in on RotoQL with a three-day free trial by going to the link right here at the bottom of the screen. RotoQL.com/YouTube. Also, take a look in the description. You need to just click on it as well as some additional information. So let's go ahead and jump into the video. What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazik, aka Franchise Play, and I wrote this article for Forbes, but it didn't quite get out there the way I wanted to, so I figured I'd make a video about it. I'll probably be doing that a lot moving forward. Now, let's jump into it. Some of this I'm gonna just basically read my writing verbatim, and other times I'll kind of deviate a little bit, but let's jump into this topic about boxing video games, because I think it's one that definitely needs to be addressed. Boxing video game fans we're thirsty as an out-of-shape heavyweight in the final 30 seconds of a grueling 12-round fight. And if you know anything about boxing, you know that's thirsty. It doesn't appear as though EA Sports, 2K, Sony, or Microsoft have any plans of touching the sweet science anytime soon. So I believe that independent developers are going to be the ones that are going to have to bring any hope for virtual pugilist. The last boxing game they released was Fight Night Champion, and that was back in March of 2011, if you can believe it or not, and it was for the last generation of consoles. Fight Night Champion had a really favorable Metacritic score of 86, and many still speak fondly of the now 6-year-old title. As a matter of fact, my son and I, Junior, are probably going to get in a little bit of action on the game sometime soon. Despite the game's cult following, EA seems more inclined to nurture its UFC series. I don't blame them. I understand MMA and the popularity of the sport is really blowing up, but I just feel a little bit left out in the cold without a boxing game. From a business standpoint, as I said, the decision makes sense for EA. A publisher/developer like EA doesn't do small projects. So in order to make it a big project, EA would need to gain a license to the biggest names in the sport. In boxing, that is a huge undertaking because there's no union license that you can acquire that would uncover the access to all of the desirable fighters. For example, in the NBA, you get the Players Association license, and unless there's some special deal like the one Michael Jordan used to have, that means you get access to LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and every other superstar. Same thing in the in Major League Baseball and the NFL. Now, EA has the financial means to pay every fighter of any interest, but would the game sell enough units and garner enough microtransactions to make the licensing investment worth the publisher's while? Probably not, but perhaps EA doesn't need to take those kinds of risks. They have sure things like Madden, FIFA, and NHL. The dynamic is different for an independent developer, though. The expectations are lower across the board. Subconsciously, I don't expect indie games to be as visually impressive as the titles that come from major publishers. So I don't expect as much depth, and I certainly don't look for any indie sports game to have the same level of licenses. My educated guess is that those lowered expectations are shared by most gamers. When we get games as outstanding as Rocket League, it's a pleasant surprise. I think I speak for all boxing video game fans when I say I'm ready for an independent developer to take a swing at the sweet science. There's a few keys to success if an indie developer is going to pick up the sport of boxing. I think there needs to be a fun balance between arcade and ultra simulation gameplay. Most hardcore boxing fans want an ultra realistic boxing video game that doesn't dumb down any of the sports characteristics to appeal to a larger audience. But the truth is, that's not the smartest way to approach development. Now, I know a lot of boxing heads are probably clicking the dislike button, but hear me out. We live in a world with customizable experiences, and gaming companies are beginning to offer different modes within a game to attract larger audiences. Madden 18 will have an arcade and competitive gaming mode, as well as a esports mode, where it's actually called a simulation and a competitive gaming mode. So they're going to have 3 different experiences. I suggest a boxing title have a similar setup. Gamers who simply want to slug it out should be able to do that. And those who want an experience that is as close to the real thing as possible without getting punched in the face should have the same access. That should be the primary objective of the gameplay. Customization, if you guys know me, you know customization is always king for me. An in-depth fighter customization tool is necessary for any sports game these days, but it's especially important for an indie boxing game without major fighters licensed. From the smallest to the biggest, sports video game communities fill in the gaps created by a lack of licensing in their favorite titles. Pro Evolution Soccer creators do their best to make up for the exclusive licenses that Konami lacks. NBA 2K creators go to work to add legends like I do, and college players like people like Embrace the Pace do, that the game cannot include for legal reasons. Fans of an indie boxing video game would have to do the same thing. It's important they have the tools to make anyone, real or fictitious, that they want. You cannot approach any video game, especially a sports game, without taking into consideration some aspect of esports. If at all possible, it would behoove any video game developer to explore the possibilities of their title becoming an esports event. This doesn't fit every game, but it would be ideal for a boxing title. Developing an esports friendly game means working hard to eliminate elements that remove that competitive balance. That means you can't have any overpowered fighters, moves or characteristics that just cannot be defended. You can't have any of that. Obviously, we see a little bit of that right now with Injustice. Some people complain about the projectile usage from people like Deadshot. There's always post-release updates to fix unforeseen issues, but there's less ground to cover if the developers were thinking esports from the beginning. A career mode is another important mode to develop. Realistically, it doesn't have to be as sophisticated as FIFA's The Journey, but something that features a solid challenge and a different experience from head-to-head play. Lastly, the servers have to be strong. Online would probably be the most popular way to play a boxing game. As a new title, one of the toughest shortcomings to overcome would be a less than reliable server set that kills the online experience. If that's not working well, it's the equivalent of trying to bounce back from a 10-8 round in the first frame. You are fighting an uphill battle. I strongly believe that what I'm talking about can be done. Boxing is not going to drive the same crowd that football, basketball, or baseball does, but the interest is there, especially for an indie developer who doesn't need to make the same killing to call their project a success. When you remove the cost of acquiring licenses, there should be even less cost to develop. There are groups of fans campaigning for boxing video games. You got people like Poetic Drink to You, who has the whole boxing video game, where's our boxing video game petition on change.org. There's several other people who maybe haven't gone to the same lengths formally to try to get a boxing video game. I interviewed Damian Lillard some years back, and when he was on the cover of NBA Live, and he talked about when he went to the EA Sports headquarters, that was one of the requests he made. He wanted to see another boxing video game. It's surprising at this point that no indie developer has taken the plunge. There was a Kickstarter for a group trying to develop a boxing manager game called Ring Kings back in 2013, but that campaign has fallen by the wayside. A manager title was mildly interesting, but it wouldn't be as successful as a full action boxing game. Hopefully, there's an indie developer / boxing fan who is listening to this and getting inspired.